I spent a good amount of time last night getting the engine harness for the 240 tucked back away so I can put the dashboard back in that I flocked on the last episode. It's looking pretty good right now. I pulled all the wires out and stuffed them back through the smallest hole in the firewall that I could find. So it's all tucked up, it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and then we can get back to putting the dash back in. If you're just joining me and you have no idea what's going on with my 240SX, feel free to go back a couple of videos and check it out. It's basically a full exterior and interior refresh, doing an all new body kit, all new interior. I'm gonna leave the motor and the wheels, but that's about it. Everything is gonna get taken apart, looked through, fixed, and improved. It's basically what I'm calling version 3 of my 240SX. I really want to get this dash back in, but I need to make sure that everything is all sorted out with the wiring. For the most part, it's all good to go. This big mess of wires in the middle is for the gauges, and it looks pretty bad right now, but it kind of just needs to be tidied up and zip tied. They're all being used. That's the big thing, is there's a lot of wiring that's not being used in this car. And what I mean about refining things is really like going through and figuring out what all this extra crap is, because there's probably 15 or 20 wires going to the trunk that aren't even plugged into anything. So first of all, I want to figure out why my dome light's not working. I'm using these cool rock lights as dome lights. There's one on the roof, and then there's two that go where the kick panels are in the footwell, as well as one behind the center console. So the door switch right now is showing that the car door is open, because it's not being pushed down, but the dome light's not turned on. I assume there's probably some ground that's not plugged in, which is what's causing that. So I'm gonna dig around for a little bit and figure that out, because I think once I have those working, I'll probably be comfortable to put the dash back in and start going through these other harnesses. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it, but I was actually pretty puzzled by that simple little thing of just trying to figure out why it wasn't grounded. And all it was that the switches are actually the ground, and since they weren't installed, they weren't grounding to the chassis. As soon as I put the switch in the door, the dome light's working fine now. So glad that's resolved. Now we can put the dash back in. There we go. It feels so nice to get that dash back in there. I really needed that mentally. I feel like the last week or two, the car has just been kind of stagnant. As soon as we started painting the interior, everything just really slowed down, and that took forever. But I can't wait to start cutting into this body harness and start throwing away some of these wires that are pretty much just taking up a whole bunch of space and not doing anything. Everything with the dash is finally all back in. I'm ready to move on, but I realized I made a huge mistake. I forgot to flock the glove box. I'm not really sure if people flock glove boxes also with the dash. It would kind of make sense because it's all part of the same piece. I'm kind of liking the way it looks with the contrast. Some of the other plastic parts that are the same color. Maybe I'll just leave it and it'll grow on me. I mean, the center console's not going to be flocked. The door panels aren't going to be flocked. They're all the same color. Maybe I'll just leave it for now, and we can move on to that wiring finally. You might have noticed that the lighting in my garage looks a little bit different today, and I'll tell you why. I've been an automotive filmmaker for about 15 years, and I primarily focus on motorsports, which means I don't usually shoot indoors a lot. Most things are naturally lit, and I don't have a whole lot of experience with artificial lighting. So what I did was I bought two 60-watt lights. I figured it was worth a shot just to kind of mess around and learn some things. What's ironic about it is my dad was a grip in the film industry for about 40 years, which is literally the person who sets up lights on movie sets. So he's able to give me a few pointers here and there, but I'm kind of just playing around with these two lights, just seeing what works. If you see some stuff that looks a little bit different or looks a little bit weird, just know that I'm kind of just having some fun with it and learning as I go. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but in the future, I'm sure I can use these lights for something else. Here's what the garage looks like with just the regular overhead lighting on. And here it is with the two 60-watt lights turned on and two of the overhead lights unplugged, but I'll have to wait till I get it on my laptop to see if I like it or not. It's definitely a little more work. I just started cutting into the passenger side wire harness. It was a little bit of a slow start, but once you get that hockey tape kind of like tearing the direction you want it, it starts to go. The only wire that I'm gonna be using out of this giant harness is this button here that turns on and off the dome light when the door is open and closed. None of these wires are doing anything. They go to a couple of plugs. One of them's not even plugged in, and the other one just has a bunch of dead leads with wires that go nowhere. There was some wires that go to my sub that I had in here a long time ago. I was gonna put it back in, but never got around to. So once I finish up with this, I'll get that cable all nice and wrapped up and routed along the seat here where it goes, and then I'll go over to the driver's side. I've got my one wire out for that door switch. It's got a hilariously huge plug on it. I'm not sure why you need this gigantic waterproof plug, but I'm gonna cut that off and replace it with this tiny little one. Should be a lot easier to hide. I'm well into the driver's side harness now, and this one's a lot more complicated than the passenger side was. There is a ton of wires just for the stereo system alone. All the OEM amplifiers and those things were located in the back underneath the parcel tray, so all the wires going to that and the rear speakers. I'm gonna remove all that stuff. The loom should be a lot thinner after that. I'm trying to figure out what this plug goes to. I don't think it was plugged in, so I really want to cut it out, but I want to make sure that it's not something important. It goes to the same place on the center console where the plug for my electronic mirrors went, but there's nothing else on the center console, and I don't think it goes to the stereo. So I'm just really puzzled by it. Maybe it was some kind of aftermarket thing, but it looks very OEM, so I'm not sure what to do. I'm going to dig around a little bit more and see if I can figure it out. I never realized you could pull this gigantic box out of the fuse block. This pretty much has all the wires that go from the center of the car all the way to the back. It's running the taillights and things like that. Getting this out will make it a lot easier to depin some of these wires and get it cleaned up. Also to get that wire shielding back on it so that it looks nice and clean. I think at this point it's probably pretty obvious that I'm the type of person that likes to learn things and do stuff all by myself. And I think it's really important that we take advantage of everything that's available to us in this generation, especially the internet. Somebody uploaded the factory service manual for my car, and I've got all 2,000 pages of it here. I was kind of just scrolling through it all, taking a look, and I found this insane diagram of all the stuff connected to that body harness. And it looks like B7 is that plug that I was confused about, and B7 overdrive control switch, which would make a lot of sense because my car used to be an automatic, and that would be the reason why it wasn't plugged in anything. So I think I'm okay to cut that back and get rid of it, which makes me really excited. All right, so I got the whole harness out and I've got it laid out on the ground here, trying to figure out how to put this shielding over the entire thing to make it look really nice. Like I've mentioned before, the wire shielding is not that hard to get over. It's more the shrink tubing that can't fit over the plugs usually. I think worst case scenario, I might have to depin 15 of these wires, which might be worth it because I think it would look pretty nice if I got it all like shrinked up and stuff like that. So let's give it a shot. Maybe I'll start with the big side. I always try to remember to take a few pictures of the plug too. You never know if you get in a pinch where you forgot where something went. There's got to be a better way of doing this, right? So I just ended up putting a chair down in the garage and watching some TV for a few hours, and cleaning up this wire harness wasn't really too bad. This is by no means what a real motorsports harness looks like. It's just a cleaned up OEM one. If you want to learn how to build a professional motorsports harness for your car, just like they use in F1 or WRC, you can using HPAcademy's online classes. I'm going to put a discount code in the description to get $50 off any of the classes. Just going to get this big block plugged back in here and then start running the harness towards the back. Hopefully I measured everything to length. If you don't know much about this car, you probably haven't realized it yet, but it's actually on air ride, and I got so focused on the wiring that I almost forgot to run this 1/4 inch push to connect tubing from the rear management up to the front wheel wells. When I first installed this, I was really excited to get it done and a little bit lazy and cheap, so I just drilled a hole through the firewall and sent the tubing straight through it. That's actually pretty sketchy because if this tubing gets damaged, it'll leave you on the side of the road with no air in one of your bags. So I think the best way to prevent that is to use these push to connect bulkheads. These will create a tight connection on the firewall and that tubing won't be able to move around and get damaged. The only real drawback with these is that you're adding 2 more places that the air ride can leak from, but more than likely it's going to be a really slow leak and the management can actually compensate for that. So the passenger side was pretty easy. The bulkhead fitting went straight through, no problem. But for whatever reason, on the driver's side, I chose a horrible place to drill this hole when I did it the first time. And I probably should have just moved it and plugged the old hole, but I wasn't really thinking. There's 2 pieces of metal that are separated by probably a 1/4 inch or more. And so I'm gonna see if I can squeeze those 2 together with a big nut and a bolt. So let's see if that works. That's not the prettiest install I've ever seen, but it definitely worked, and I can touch up the paint in a few weeks when I spray the trunk. I wish I could move it a little bit further to the left, but the problem with that is you get really close to the tire, and that's easily the most common way that people cause failures in their air ride system. That's also the reason I used the 90-degree part of the bulkhead on the wheel well side, was to point that air line as far away as the tire as possible, so hopefully it's a lot less sketchy now. The thing I've been the most excited about getting back in the car this week is these delete panels. These basically just cover up all the unsightly holes and things that are left over after you take out the interior and the seats and all that stuff. If my car was like a fully built race car, it'd be totally okay to have, you know, nothing back there. But since it's a little bit of a show car, I want it to look nice. I don't want it to look all nasty and torn apart. So these do a really good job of making it look a lot more put together and thought out. They're all red right now because they were wrapped the same color as the exterior of my car. So I'm gonna pull all the wrap off today and wrap them with the new color. So by the end of this video, you're gonna get to see what color the car is gonna be. Pulling the vinyl off of these isn't as much fun as putting it on. I also put some Velcro, like the soft side, on the back of it where the contact points were to try to kind of dampen them from rattling a little bit. And I sprayed them with undercoating to make them a little bit less tinny, but they're still pretty tinny. So I've got another trick I'm gonna try. I might put some foam on them and see how that goes. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing this for a while. My heat gun stopped working, and I think it was actually a blessing in disguise because I started using the MAP gas torch and it went a lot faster after that. The vinyl came off much easier. Everything's done now, so I'm gonna start wrapping the parcel tray. It was pretty cool to have the parcel tray matching the exterior color before because it's such a visible piece. But what I noticed right away was that it had a lot of glare, and you would see a reflection of everything going by, like trees and things, and it would reflect off the bottom of the window and you'd see it in the rearview mirror. It made it pretty apparent why OEMs always use carpet and non-reflective surfaces for things like parcel trays. So I'm gonna mimic that and use the same carpet that I used for the Quattro parcel tray, glue it on there, and that should definitely keep the reflections down. It's not gonna match the rest of the delete panels, but those are gonna be a pretty dark color too, so I think it'll look fine. This is the same fabric I used on the Quattro. I just bought a little bit more of it, and it turned out pretty good. I think it's just what you would normally use to cover a subwoofer. It's not super thick. It doesn't have any padding or anything. I should probably iron it a little bit, I feel like, before I glue this down, because you might see the creases. I've got a regular iron too, but I think this clothes steamer will work pretty well, so let's see. All right, so you gotta spray this and then wait 1 to 2 minutes and then put it down. So let's see how that goes. The parcel tray is looking great. I'm really happy with how it's turning out. I did cut the holes in the carpet for the speakers, even though they're not really gonna be working at all. And it's also kind of ironic, I don't really like them being exposed, so I got some steel mesh to put over them. There are some little holes cut out in this thing for where the trunk hinges kind of protrude, and I left the carpet over those because I'm hoping to cover those up. They didn't get painted that well, and they looked kind of funny being bright white sticking through the aluminum. So this is the foam that I'm gonna use on the back of all the panels. It's not really like typical sound deadening. It's really lightweight. I'm pretty much just looking for a way to keep the panels from rattling. So I'm sure this will help a little bit. I don't wanna add, 100 pounds to the car with a bunch of sound deadening. So we'll see, this might be a happy medium. Just as promised, I've got the vinyl here that I'm gonna wrap the interior panels with, and this is also gonna be the exterior color of the car. No tricks here, it's gonna be dark purple. And I absolutely love red S14s, but I think I was ready for something new, so dark purple it is. I've always wanted a purple car. I can't wait to see how it looks on the exterior, but for now, let's just focus on these panels. The vinyl's going pretty quick. It's super easy because all the panels are really flat. I did want to show the difference between these panels that have foam on them and not. I've almost forgot, but I've got 2 left. And here's what one sounds like without the foam. As you would expect a piece of aluminum to sound. And then one with the foam is quite a bit quieter. More of a dense, like thick sound. So that should help out a tiny bit with just the noise in the car and hearing some rattles. So I think that'll be nice. I've got all the purple vinyl on the panels now with the foam backing, so I'm gonna start kind of fishing them through the roll cage there into the back part of the car. Some of the parts of the cage are really tight up against the chassis, so I'm gonna be really careful not to scratch any of them. Probably put some masking tape on there because I don't wanna mess up my fresh paint or the fresh vinyl. The panels are all back in and they're looking really good. I haven't tightened everything up yet because I might swap those silver bolts out for some black ones just for a little bit of a cleaner look. The parcel tray came out great. I love how that thing is super simple, kind of an OEM plus look. And the panels do darken the interior a little bit, but it's a lot better than it was before with the gray paint. So happy about that. Next week, I'm gonna move on to the seats. So that'll be really awesome getting those in finally. And I'm gonna pick up the kick plates from Powder Coat. Unfortunately, I haven't figured out what harnesses I want. So I really need to figure that out so I can get the harnesses, but I mean, those can wait. I'm probably not gonna drive the car for another month. But yeah, a lot of good progress on the car so far this week, and can't wait to see what it looks like next time. So I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.